Why are people so resistant to moving to a new way of working? I think there's lots of reasons. I think partly contingent recruitment is a bit like a drug. I think the promise of it and the attraction of working on something that gives you a fee and it can just be like that and your whole, dreams are realized overnight isn't the reality of what happens.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenly, and welcome to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today, we have what might be one of our most special episodes ahead of us yet. It was episode 100, and we had it as a live event on Zoom on June 6th. So really looking forward to getting everyone's thoughts on what you think of it. But as always, before we get into the show, just want to tell you a little bit about our show itself. So here we've got shows within the show. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space, while other days we cover things like trending topics. You can stop by every Tuesday for Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help drive better results in your day-to-day. Some days we open it up for Q&A, and other days you get a mic drop episode from Matt where he shares something that he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and wants you to know. And as a reminder, if you like the content we share here, subscribe for more. So with that, let's get into episode 100. We're about 3 minutes after the half hour, so we'll get started. People will continue to trickle on in for this, but everyone, welcome to our first ever live episode. This is episode 100 for Becoming a Hiring Machine, which is absolutely crazy. I mean, who would have thought, Matt, when we were talking about this a little over a year ago, that this podcast would just be chugging along strong. People actually listen to it, surprisingly or unsurprisingly, but it's because we've had great guests here like Tim, Lou, who are rejoining us for this. So yeah, this is a really special one for us. So our goal here today really is also going to be the same thing as all of our episodes. It's going to be to help recruiters by going beyond saying what needs to change and start teaching you how to make those changes. So we've got 3 of our biggest hitters ever from episodes. You don't want to know what our demand gen manager, Diego, was going through the episodes, analyzing every single analytical element, data point, topics, themes, guests, episode lengths, and everything else. So Lou, Tim, Matt, you 3 are, if you actually go back and listen to the episodes, no surprising, 3 of the absolute fan and listener favorites. So I'll let you all introduce yourselves shortly. But what we're really going to do is just go through a few different topics. A couple of them are going to be like, where's recruitment headed? What AI has or hasn't changed for recruiters, biz dev, and so many more. And that's going to take us probably 34 minutes. And then after that, we're going to get into some Q&A with the audience. We've got people here who will be able to submit questions just through chat. And we also have a few that were submitted prior to the event. So to have a little bit of fun as we get started, I'm going to let each of the guests introduce themselves. But I also want to include a quick icebreaker for you. And that's going to be if you can only keep one app on your phone, and it's not the text, it's not the call, it's not email, what is that app?
Hey, by the way, I want the hard data on Matt because Matt's been like in 50 of the 100 episodes. Like, I don't think it's fair. Like, he just threw numbers of time being on. Like, he's a popular guest. Like, come on. I think Lou and I outnumber him. Like, because we don't get on very often.
All right. So my name is Matt. I'm the founder, CEO of Loxo, and yeah, super big pleasure to share the stage here today with Tim and Lou, and I'm really excited. So icebreaker definitely weighs. So yeah, get lost all the time. Can't live without it.
That's a smart one, especially as you're only what, a couple years into being in Texas now?
I think it's coming up on 3 years. Yeah.
3
I mean,
years?
I would
Okay.
I'd say Spotify or Waze, but I don't want to take 2.
Fair.
Yeah, so I'll go. So hi everyone. I'm Louise Archer. I run a firm called Retrain Search, and we teach contingent recruiters how to move to retained. I fell into it really because that was the journey I went on myself as a recruiter, and people started asking me, will you show me how to do it? And it's kind of grown arms and legs, as I said a moment ago, and run away with me. And if I could keep one app on my phone, I think it's a really difficult one, but I think it would have to be Keep, the Google Notes app. I have lots and lots and lots and lots of notes. I'm pretty organized, so I write everything down. If I don't write it down, I can't remember it. So I think I would be lost without that.
Smart one. And Tim.
Tim Sackett, everybody. I'm a recruiting firm owner. and also like blogger, influencer, writer, angel fund, blah, blah, blah. I just launched my second book called The Talent Fix, Volume 2, available on Amazon worldwide. Go ahead and order that. And so the one app immediately I was just like, gosh, do we do like the LinkedIn social media, TikTok, Instagram? I would have to say X probably, or my Delta app since I fly constantly. I would like hate to have to go to the counter to get like boarding passes.
Smart, man. Yeah, that really has made such a difference. And it's like you just can completely bypass that whole check-in experience now. Carry on,
hmm
phone, you're good to go.
I'll do almost anything too, not to have to check a bag. Like I was on a 7-day trip with a carry-on, and I'm like, it was strategically packed. Like that's an entire. I could like doing a YouTube channel on just how to pack for a trip for 7 days with one bag.
That's impressive. Probably use Matt's Waze app to find a laundromat somewhere in between so you can just wash halfway.
Yeah, there is some laundry being done.
Love it, love it. Well, as we dive into the first topic for today, this is a fun one with you three especially, and why I'm specifically choosing as the first one. I really want to get into, I'll call it like the old ways and the new ways of recruitment. So from workflows, things that are holding recruiters back, I guess the first question that I'll open up to you all, and we can go around or anyone can chime in during your time, but like what are some of the subtle shifts that you're noticing to current standard workflows with recruiters that can make such a big difference that many aren't yet taking advantage of?
Yeah, I'll start. Like I know obviously we're a Luxo shop. And for us it's the automation side because I think when people, especially recruiters, start first turning on having like these campaigns or nurturing, groups of candidates, you don't see this initial like right away like it works for them because it's such a change in workflow. And so we have so many that abandoned, right, and just go right back to what they know, which is, LinkedIn or job boards and on the phones and email, and they just like muscle through, right, because they know they can do the job that way. But the ones that like held out and like started like really investing and like putting the time in, that flywheel effect takes place where all of a sudden they're like, wait a minute, I have like 5 campaigns going and people are contacting me back. And like everything just starts to happen for them very quickly. Um, and so for me, that's been probably the biggest thing is to see, the recruiters who've taken on that. I've had recruiters again that they just start blowing you away with what they do. Our recruiters, we, kind of teach like the triple threat thing of, you have to reach out to these candidates, 9 times. And if you're outside the US, I know that sounds freakishly like you're like, we're freaks because in the UK, like they've reached out maybe once or twice and never again. But we do like the whole text, email, phone. And I have like recruiters who are actually part of the nurture campaign is like the phone call is actual whole voice message out. So they've automated the entire thing and they just, they have a great quality of life because of what they've been able to do with the automation.
Love it. Is there any personalization? Because I know that's the other hard part where people try to balance how do you automate it scale, so to speak, without having to just do like mail merge fields or the awkward like insert first name here.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, right, with all the generative stuff, that's in play because every day I see new like tools hitting the market and things, that are happening, and most of that's going to be around the personalization side. And so it is. I always like the personalization that happens now is still pretty much, it's not to the level where you would want. But also you have this game, right, that we have to play. It's still a numbers game. I mean, there's a little bit of art and a little bit of science. At the end of the day, I can run my numbers for the last 12 years of every single recruiter, of every single phone call, of every single email, and those who actually make the most like outreach magically, and I say that in sarcastic quotes, are the best recruiters in terms of numbers, right? In terms of number of fills and everything else, number of interviews. So there's still a little bit of that of like, yeah, I mean, we always want better personalization from a connection standpoint. But at the end of the day, you also have to turn the machine on, right? You have to build the machine and turn it on and let it run. And once that happens, like then it's not so magic. It's science.
And I think a lot of this, Sam, we're talking about like subtle shifts in workflows in Loxo land. When we think about this, we think about just in our bubble. And Tim and I have talked about this in the past, but a lot of these organizations, we always do an audit. Like, what do you do today? Lou, I'm sure you do the same thing. But most workflows, it's not all in one unified workflow. So the subtle shift is going from this database, and then you're tacking on bolt on after bolt on after bolt on. So it's a problem, right? You have this disjointed workflow, and people are trying to streamline it. And so that's a big part of what we're seeing is helping educate people. Because Tim, you told me this a long time ago. It's probably 7 years ago. Like you're so far ahead of the curve of what people are doing. And it's been 7 years, right? And people are still now just understanding, like, wait a second, you have to change your mindset. You have to change what you're doing. The rule of thumb, the old way, sure, you could do it. But if you want to be more efficient and faster, you have to embrace and adopt new systems and workflows.
I love it. So what do we think is the biggest, like, I don't know if it's a thing, a fear that holds so many recruiters back from adopting new ways, better ways, but they just stick to what's tried and true, what they always have known. I see Lou grinning over there, especially when we think about like contingent to retained and anything else. So I want to give you the chance to speak to this one first.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak less to maybe software workflows, but thinking about that, I mean, you know, the way that retained projects are managed now is just so much better. And, you know, historically, I've had to manage retained projects with spreadsheets, and the amount of value that gets lost and the opportunity that gets lost from working with a spreadsheet versus all of your clients and candidates in one CRM and being able to capture all of the people that you're touching, both potential clients and prospect future candidates that aren't ready now but might be ready later, that's missed when you use a spreadsheet, that's captured when you use a CRM. For me, like, the possibilities are just endless. And the more that our community and our members and the people that I'm coaching and working with are using that technology in their retained projects, the more work that they win from the execution of projects, even, and search from search, as we have been calling it, and because of the ability to capture it all and use that, and you end up being able to flatten the up and down of you know, deliver your projects and then end up with nothing and have to do BD and then deliver projects, and it being like that, to be able to continuously develop business and prospect as you're executing on assignments. So like it's radically different for me now than it was before, you know, to answer that one. And then the other question was, you know, why are people so resistant to moving to a new way of working? I mean, I'm speaking at this from a different angle, because for me, it's a model, you know, rather than a piece of software or, you know, a single technique. Why are people so comfortable or stuck to the contingent model and not moving to confidently and comfortably and consistently and scalably? There are lots of people doing patches of retained work, but I don't see many that have it as a fundamental model that is scalable and is bringing forecastable and repeatable revenue in, which is where you can get to with it. The reasons why, I think there's lots of reasons. I think partly contingent recruitment is a bit like a drug. I think the promise of it and the attraction of working on something that gives you a fee and it can just be like that, and your whole, you know, dreams are realized overnight, isn't the reality of what happens. But yet the promise is so attractive and so appealing, you just keep getting sucked back into it. And then you look at it logically and think, I've got an 80% chance, or at best a 75% chance, of spending time on something that does not result in a fee. And that's how I try and encourage people to look at. You think you're going to walk away from a fee, you're walking away from an 80% chance of spending time on something that results in nothing. So I think it's partly like that. It's a bit like, yeah, I'm never going to drink again on the morning of a hangover. And that's what people say, you know, I'm just not going to do contingent again. And then, you know, 6 months later, like, I'm doing it again.
Yeah.
Lou,
I like, as a staffing firm owner, like, I say this constantly to my team. Like, our only job is to figure out, how do we work for free less? Like, because like, if you take on like too much contingent, like, that's exactly what you're doing, is like, most of that is free work that will never go anywhere. And once in a while, you know, you actually land one. And so, like, we actually did this transition. But I mean, I totally back to what you're doing. First is, we do very little contingent overall. What contingent we do take on, what I call is a partial retained, where we tell the people, like, look, if you want us to start the search for you, um, we'll do it at whatever percent, but like you have to actually pay 10% of that fee up front for us to start. And by the way, when we do this partial retain, 100% of those so far that we've signed, we've filled over the last 5 years. But what we've seen was we actually had a decrease in the amount of signed contracts by about 90%. So like you said, this 80% is going to go away. We actually saw it as really about 90%. And so like then you go back and historically look at it and go, holy crap, the amount of free work our people were doing for nothing. And the frustration you have as a recruiter of saying, like, I just put my blood, sweat, and tears into this to find 3 great candidates for this company. And they go, we just decided to promote somebody within. And you're just like, oh, it's such a heartbreaker,
Yeah, it is. But the lure of it is very tempting because you think, oh, all I've got to do is find a few candidates and then bang, I've got a fee. And actually, it just never quite turns out like that. So I think that's one of the reasons. I think the other reason is there's quite a lot of misconception about retained. And I am constantly kind of spreading, and almost my life's mission is to dispel the things that I thought about retained was that it's mainly used for executive or senior hires, that it's long and bloated and slow and report heavy and boring, and that it's a bit of a smoke and mirrors, double cuff pinstripe type world that I'm never going to either want to be a part of or will be a part of. And that's just the opposite of the experience that I have had, and that you don't need to change what you're doing or change levels or go after a completely different market or go really senior. That it's a logical solution to the problems that the contingent model isn't solving. And where a customer is getting what they want from a contingent model, let them carry on doing it. But what you tend to find is that they're not having a great time either. It's just in the same way that you're not trying to deliver against it. They're not getting what they want when they want it, or it's not a particularly enjoyable process. And so when you say, actually, there's a different way of working, I'd quite like to show you, it's a bit like, well, okay, but why didn't you suggest this before? And that's how I've learned that it isn't all the things. So I think there's the misconceptions and the preconceptions stop people. It's probably in the same way, like they'd look at a piece of software and think, oh, that looks scary or complicated, or I'm never going to be able to learn how to do it. And when you break that down and show them how easy it is, actually, you can embrace it, but there's still barriers to change.
I feel like, Matt, that's a good segue over to you on the software side. You've spoken to thousands of recruiters, firms, agencies on like the fear of switching platforms, tools, anything else. Like, what do you think there is the biggest fear that holds people back from something that they know intuitively is better?
Yeah. So, I mean, status quo is what we come up against, right? And that's true for like any SaaS business process software. But in the recruitment space, you're kind of running up against this old guard. You have forever, and we'll talk about kind of tech. This has never existed before this, right? It didn't really matter what database you had, and you only had so many sources. You're either post and pray, you're going to your network, or everyone has access to LinkedIn if you're actually headhunting, right? And so it's like you're going to LinkedIn, everyone goes to the same pool. Most people don't even source that methodically, right? Or you're like, who do you know who's a good senior engineer or whatever, right? But ultimately, it's hard to change human behavior because the exact same thing Lou said about being kind of afraid to do things differently, or it just, you're comfortable. It's rule of thumb. People do rule of thumb. You do what you always know, what you were trained by other people. And you have this entire generation that were raised by, what's the old Rolodex? You have your little file folder with your CV cabinet behind you. But like literally, I've sat down with people in the early days and was like, what do you do today? And she's like, literally, I have these name cards right here. And this is my, A to Z. These are the people that I reach out to that are the top lawyers. And that's how things were done, right? So the challenge is just helping meet people and not to scare them. And it's just our job is to help. Technology is there to make people more efficient and better versions of themselves. That's it. But change management, you have to be a partner and lead them through it because they've never done it before.
Yeah, in estimation, I think I run into a lot of like teams, that are, in leaders, and they're always like, how do you get your team to use your technology 100% of the time? And I'm like, well, first, it's a non-negotiable. If I've made this investment as an owner or as a leader of a recruiting function, that this technology is going to make us better, then I'm a failure as a leader if I don't enforce my team to use it. Secondly, I have to build the process around that technology, which is, If it's a SaaS technology, I'm not going to ask Matt and the team to break the technology. I'm going to follow the process they've spent millions of dollars developing and go, let's see if this thing actually works and does. And thirdly, there has to be kind of a transparent data stream so I can actually show my team currently, every single recruiter on my team can look at everybody else's data every minute of the day. It's completely transparent. Nobody can go, well, Tim, you treat, Mary better than John and blah, blah, blah. Like no one can say that. We have the same goals. We have the same data. Everybody can look at each other's. And it's a condition of employment that they use the process and technology that we put forth. Now, again, if they come to me and say, hey, I think we have a better one, we're going to test it. We're going to look at it. We're going to actually, prove that out. If it doesn't prove out, then we're going back to what we know in terms of actually using the technology. But so often I talk to a leader that will go, well, we're only using 20% of the technology and half my team won't use it. And I'm like, that's a you problem. That's not a recruiter problem, and they just don't want to see it that way.
I think that's such a good, strong point that it really does have to be championed from the top, no matter what tech. Like it's not a tech problem. It's fully just how an organization sets, uses, and trains everything. Want to shift over to the next topic, which has been a massive one. It's not AI just quite yet, over the past year, but it's biz dev. And the reason for it is like so many people, recruiters haven't really had to do too much biz dev. During the glory years, in the past 5 years, it really wasn't until like the last year and a half or so they had to do too much of it. So just super easy right off the bat, like any tips for those who are struggling to drive or retain revenue, just like one quick thing that you would recommend that they start doing today?
I mean, for me, it's easy. When I'm in business development mode, I'm in like pain hunting mode, and that's my mission. I want to find out what challenges people are facing, and sometimes when the market is quiet for hiring, it appears in different places. It's not necessarily hiring. It might be retention, or it can be comp structures, or it could be sales strategy, or it can be all sorts of stuff. But it's very rare that it's a problem that talent isn't somewhere integrated, that people don't form some part of it. And therefore, it's very rare that you come across a problem that you can't solve with some kind of retained solution. So I'm just after, I'm after pain. Yeah. That sounds awful, doesn't it?
No, I
That sounds
think
so bad.
I think in biz dev, like we definitely, you're looking at pain money, right? You're following the money, you're following where the pain is because the opportunity is going to be there. What I would say though, my one key is for like our most successful biz dev folks, they're expert in follow up. Because when you get into that biz dev mode of following the pain, following the money, it's so easy just to jump and jump and jump, and you're just trying to get a hold of anybody, you're trying to do everything, and then there's no follow up. And you're like, oh, well, I called that company 3 months ago, and they said they were doing nothing. In fact, they were laying off. And then some other company got the work because there was just somebody there that was following up, or just happened to call at the right time. I see it like all the time. Like the people who are great at following up on a really consistent basis. Now, again, I have to wrap that around like a completely content marketing strategy as well, right? So, I mean, we try to treat our clients, and I only call somebody a client if they're actually writing me a check, and potential clients more from an advising standpoint of like, hey, I'm not coming to you for recruiting work, recruiting work, recruiting work. I'm in a like our content strategy is we're going to try to educate you. We're going to try to tell you every single thing we do and how you can do it better for your own team, knowing that the dirty little secret and in the most corporate sense is there's still going to be capacity issues and work for you there, but now they're going to trust you because you're actually trying to help them. You're just not trying to sell to them. We just are really crappy at following up.
I can't remember where, it was on LinkedIn or something the past week. Someone said you only ever have to have one true like cold call. After that, it's a warm call. Like once you've made that connection, and so many people just stop after that. And to your point, like following up, it's easy once you've done that.
I can't tell you how many clients we have that like the client, like the TA leader or the HR leader was at one company, and like over the last like decade, like we've probably followed them to 3 or 4 different companies, right? And like because that relationship becomes so strong, and again, that's a pretty common thing within the industry. I've had the chance of actually, I worked a decade on the corporate side of TA as well, and the thing I hated was those recruiting teams that would come in, or the agency teams that would come in, and like they were just so like in your face about getting contracts signed, and like just like over the top, when they never really wanted to know, like, hey, I just don't have anything for you right now, but like I have some recruiters who are struggling with this or this. I wish I had some education, or I wish I had something, whatever it might be. And they just couldn't turn off the sales side of it. And I'm like, so when I went to the other side, on the agency side, I'm like, I'm never going to be that agency guy that sits in front of a TA leader or an HR leader and is just trying to sell. I mean, I just don't. In fact, I probably like lose that sales because I don't. Like, I'm just trying to figure out, how can I help you and your team?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to recommend technology. Maybe I'm going to recommend a better process. I'll even sit with their teams and like show them, right, what we would do to recruit for them, and give away that secret sauce. And I think it comes back
Yeah.
to us tenfold. Like, we're up quarter over quarter, we're up 25% this year. So to me, I think it works, but it's a consistent kind of ongoing content strategy.
I completely
think-
agree. One of my guys in my mastermind group, like a top, does about 420 K a month in retained revenue now. He shared on one of the collab calls that when he specs a candidate in, which he still does, even though it's majority C-suite, sort of 300K base salaries minimum. And it works really well for retained, actually. But anyway, when he does that, in the first instance, when it's a new client, he'll give it to them for free if they choose to go with them, on the basis that if they like him and what he's doing for them and they want to work with him again, then the next time they're going to pay. And he had that candidate anyway. So it's the same principle. Like, what is it you want? If this is what you need right now, have it. I'm going to give it to you because that's going to pay me back in spades. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. So I'm absolutely with you. The more problems that you can solve for them in the short term with the generosity of their best interests at heart, the better the long-term relationship is going to be.
And I'm gonna take a contrarian point of view here too, is, something that Tim said is important. And Sam, your question was like, what's that quick tip, right? And there's no quick tip or trick. And BD's hard, and it's because it's an employer-driven market. It's a really challenging economy, and that's why everyone cares about BD. But from our perspective, when people come to us, they're asking for that silver bullet. Like, what software should I use, and what easy button can I click to just get job orders, right? It's not how it works. So, and Sam knows my perspective. I like holistically looking at a system, and if you have to figure out your goals. What are your goals? If you're an independent headhunter or boutique, you might make one more placement a year. It doesn't take a lot. Pick up the phone and have high activity, deliver a great product, a great service, deliver on your word, know your market, add value, right? You don't have to change the world and do anything fancy or sophisticated. But if you're a larger organization, multinational, or you aspire to be a larger org, you should be sophisticated. And so what we do is like, we talk a lot. I usually audit, like, what do you use today for BD? Oh, we don't. What do you mean you don't? You've existed for 20 years. You don't do anything for BD? Nope, we use our ATS. Okay, that's a problem, right? Do you do account-based? And so I believe, we've talked about this a lot, I believe the top performing recruitment organizations are going to look more like a tech company, and they will specialize in labor. They'll build a TAM. They'll do some marketing, like some groups that are really sophisticated at marketing, like VP of marketing, they'll use HubSpot. But at the end of the day, you figure out who your ideal customer prospect looks like. You get a list and you reach out to them, a high activity, and nurture them and add value. And, if you deliver value at the end and build a reputation for that, you'll scale your BD. But most people don't do that. It sounds obvious, I think, for tech, but I've had thousands of conversations, and most people don't do BD. They just hire some, sales executives that do some, or do a full desk, and then it's tough, right? It's tough. But and then the speculative CV or MPC is the approach that a lot of the boutiques have taken over years, and it works well. But I'm sure Tim has some strong opinions. You both probably do on that. But that's why BD is like, you have a style, you have an approach, you have to figure out what are your goals, what's your methodology, and why, and is it working? And whatever works, double down. But it comes down to people, right? Relationship driven, delivering on good service, doing things the right way.
And there's no one right strategy. I think everyone wants like the one strategy. If you go and look at any professional football team, soccer team, like they all use different strategies because they're trying to accomplish different things with the personnel they have, the goals that they have, and that's why there's no one strategy that everyone say, if you make 100 dials a day, you'll book $2.5 million this year. If you go and spec out 10 people, you know, it's so different based on all of the variables within there. And to your point, that's where it's like you have to really understand that, know your audience, what you're going after, and just buying a piece of tech isn't going to fix that. You have to understand all of that to craft your own strategy and then pull in the tools, the resources, the personnel to accomplish that.
Yeah, I see that on the
It's
content
oh,
side
sorry.
consistently. No, sorry, Lou. Because people always say like, "Well, I want to do what you're doing," and I'm like, "Oh, cool! Like, we'll start and do, this. I write every single day. I speak at conferences all over the world. And I've been doing that for a decade." And they're like, "Well, no, I just want to do that right now." And I'm like, "Well, it doesn't happen like that. Like, there's a consistency of it, right?"
A long tail. Yeah. Lou, you were going to add to that?
I'm just thinking about what Matt's saying, and I think it's fascinating, like how other industries, and recruiting is one of them, is learning so much from SaaS and the way that the SaaS world operates. And in fact, when I met Sarah Chester, who's our head of digital, for the second time after we worked together, there was about a 5-year gap in between. And in that time, she'd got sick of business development in its old-fashioned form and started trying to develop business using digital marketing. And she put herself through a few digital marketing courses, and it worked, like on a small scale. And she ended up getting snapped up by a big retained house, Talentworks, that do big retained multi-hire RPOs, and she built a digital marketing team, and they were responsible for the vast majority of their however many millions in revenue from a lead perspective, but also from the candidate side. And what she was building was the front end of a SaaS marketing machine that was working for retained business. And when I went out for that drink with her, and I told her how I'd kept getting brought in to help companies move from contingent to retain, and I was going to probably have to set this company up to do it because nobody else seemed to be doing it very effectively. She said, "Well, why don't we put the marketing machine in for that?" And so she started doing our marketing. But what's ended up happening is she's ended up doing marketing and helping people with the digital marketing for their retained divisions as they've built it. And that's why, she's come across you guys, and she now recommends Loxo because it integrates so well with the front end machine that obviously, Tim, you're using really successfully, and why we've met and been working together for the last couple of years. But it's mad really that it's only now starting to catch up, the recruiting industry, with using the techniques of the digital marketing that SaaS has been doing so well. So while I don't think there's a silver bullet and I don't think there's a fixed way, I think the SaaS industry would disagree and say, actually, there is a proven method of step by step. You define your target audience, your TAM, you put your consistent method, and you iterate and iterate and iterate and iterate until it works. And then boom, you can scale it to 20 million as people do. Maybe we're just not quite there yet. Maybe there is a fixed way and we just haven't quite got to it.
Mm-hmm. It's so absolutely brilliant how you put that. And it's, yeah, in the past, it used to be to prospect, you had to pitch. Now it's to prospect, you add value, and it's not doing it in siloed of a BD team, a sales team, a marketing team, but in SaaS, it's a cohesive go-to-market team and how they all work together. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see if that really does start to pick up more in the recruitment world, because that's what a lot of SaaS organizations are doing. And I can talk to our two head of sales. I hope they love me. I think they love me. I love working with them. But it's how you drive results. It's the ecosystem that you have to create with that. So want to spend the last 10 minutes on AI, not because, it's such a hot topic and everything else, but I almost want to take a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek approach with it, in the sense that, like, the initial buzz has started to wear off. AI is not taking over recruitment jobs left and right. But what are the persisting sentiments, use cases? How are you and your team actually using AI in your day-to-day? Curious to hear from you three where that started to land.
I'll start. I still think like the use cases around recruiting, I get to see upwards of 150 different technologies in play. I've seen a lot of AI stuff that's in beta right now. So like the future of where we're going in recruitment and how this is going to impact the process We've already seen it in high volume, right? 90% of the work in high volume recruiting is pretty much done by either machine learning or some generative stuff. And we see these new tools being built out. And really in most aspects, low skill, no skill hiring, I would say by sometime end of 2025, if it's not 100% done with an AI process, you're behind as a company, right? Like you just haven't figured this out. Um, I don't mean that this is the death of recruitment, because what I do believe is that AI is going to do, again, 75% of the tactical work right off the bat of, outreach, scheduling, like all this kind of operational kinds of things that bog our recruiters down. What it's going to allow is our recruiters to really, really go out and actually understand what is the top talent in the market. How do I actually go and nurture that top talent? How do we build these relationships? How do I actually have real conversations and make people feel really desired by my company for this job, for this hiring manager, for wherever that might be? We've complained about that for 2 decades, that we're on this treadmill and we can never really give the attention we want. I'm already starting to see it with some of my recruiters. I have a couple of recruiters who are fully invested in the technology, utilize it better than anybody else. And the NPS and the comments coming back from candidates that they have about them, it's literally constantly like, I've never worked with a recruiter that has spent this much time with me and treated me like this. And like, you're already starting to feel and see it. And then again, the hiring managers feel the same way, because recruiters can give them so much more insight to the people that they're sending to them. It's not just about paper flow anymore. It's about truly understanding what this hiring manager wants, needs, desires, at the same time these candidates. So it gets back to like ultra like personalization around like being able to spend time with a candidate. So I say that, like, there's a new tech that I just listened to the other day, where it was an AI interviewer. And so think of like the best recruiter you have on your team, the one that loves your brand, that loves, like, just has a great energy. And it was interviewing a professional person for like an accounting job. Holy crap, there was almost zero latency. You almost couldn't tell. I mean, if you didn't know it was an AI bot, having this conversation, you might have been tricked into believing. I mean, it's that close right now. So again, I don't need necessarily a human to do a lot of this kind of tactical work, but it does allow now my humans to actually go and do some really cool stuff. But we have to define what that cool stuff is.
Yeah, I have such strong opinions on this. But again, must be a contrarian. The buzz hasn't worn off. I think that it's a renaissance. Right? This is the golden era. It's going to happen. But I think, again, there's no easy button. And I think what happened is ChatGPT exploded. It made it simple for people to feel. It was visceral. The difference is, though, this stuff, it doesn't happen overnight. Tim, as you know, there's a million startups that come and pitch, hey, we're this AI company. We raised a big seed round or a Series A. Amazing. I've been living and breathing this since 2013 when we started our first version. It's not simple. You have to hire the people, hire the VPs, build the infrastructure, build your own servers. The reason why it costs so much money to run these things is because it requires a ridiculous amount of horsepower, right? The machines are not even fast enough. Some of these things take months just to run. And I preface it too, is everyone assumes AI is the same thing. It's not. LLMs are entirely different, and everyone assumes that's what you're doing. What you do is you break down and understand like the jobs to be done. And what Tim is alluding to is like, you'll have like high volume chatbots inbound. They're screening, right? It's just a different variation on screening, but they're doing it for valuation. When we approach it, we look at how can we help recruiters be super recruiters. And again, it goes back to our job is to be a platform for the world's best recruiting companies to be faster and better. That's business process software. It's just code. But when we look at it, we break those down, and brick by brick, you take a look. So we've been working on something forever. We're almost on our 4th generation one, Loxo AI, which helps solve a problem, which is identify talent candidates way faster, easier, rank them in order of best fit. Then there's all sorts of generative AI throughout the workflow. As Tim mentioned, there's outbound messaging that will be automated. Anyone who's still doing manual outreach and typing up outreach campaigns and emails, in my opinion, in the future, it's just a huge waste of time. So move up the value chain. But I don't think the buzz is wearing off. I just think I think people get frustrated because they get pitched by so many tech vendors out there. And they're like, we've heard this for a while. And like every time you say you have AI, like you don't even show anything to us, right? And so that's why everyone latches on to generative AI, because now they can see it. You hit a button, it's like Copilot just created this script. Like it's not going to solve your problem today.
I do think, like, one of the fears I still feel and hear on a daily basis is around this bias kind of selection side. And even when I talk to enterprise level, like, companies are like going, look, we're legal and IT and everybody would never allow us to, use selection in AI. And again, I'll go like steal Matt's word of being a contrarian. I believe that AI will be the closest thing to bias-free hiring that we can ever get to. I know that the humans I have, the recruiters and the hiring managers, all have implicit bias. Some of that bias we know, much of it we don't. I can actually measure the bias of my algorithms and my AI. I can train for it, and I can not only can I train a specific private LLM to do selection, I can train another LLM that will actually be the legal double check of the first LLM, right? So my AI is checking my AI, and that's really the future of what we'll see in a lot of this stuff. Is that you're going to have all these private language models being built that can do very specific things, and they'll do it very well. But also, we have to go, wait a minute, we're in this very legal private world that we care about people's privacy and we care about their legal rights. So we're going to have more AI that's going to be making sure that this stuff is legal and that it is private and it is all those things that we say it will be. And it's doing this in milliseconds, right? So it's not like it's, we're waiting for these like three little bubbles to like type us something back, even though we will have some of that, because psychologically we actually love that because we think it's a real person actually typing to us. In some of these aspects. The other thing, like Matt, like, and I don't know how far away this truly is, but we also talk about the clickety clackety of typing all this crap out, when in
Yeah.
reality we're going to be speaking to our computers, right? I'm not going to have recruiters doing intake messages. My AI will do an intake, or intake with my hiring manager. The hiring manager will just go, holy crap, I need another software engineer. And the computer will go, well, do you want it like the last one we hired, like Micah, like that would, and you're like, well, yeah, kind of, except I want this and this and this as well. Okay, like, so then it'll just keep going through this great intake. And then within hours, all of a sudden, this hiring manager will start to see, like, interviews popped up on, their schedule and stuff like that. Like, Matt, like, how far are we really from that world? Is that 3 years down the road, 5 years? Because I saw an AI, professor the other day that said, like, work as we know it, 5 years. He actually like titled it, "This is my last 5 years of work." Like, that's how, like, he's like, but in 5 years,
Yeah.
AI will do so much, I won't even work anymore.
Well, so like I fell in love with machine learning probably, I don't know, 2009 or so. Ray Kurzweil, if anyone's ever heard of him, the transcendent man. And I'm like, oh my God, machines one day are going to be able to learn and predict with accuracy better than humans. And it's like zeros and ones. And it's anyway, without getting, I'm a tech geek, obviously, about this stuff, but it's here and it's different, but it's going to take a long time. It's going to happen in every industry. And there's robots over in Singapore. They just showed, I think, in or Taiwan, they have new chips that most of the whole world uses for AI. And these chips, they already have robots that can do like your chores and run around in the house, right? But that'll take 20 years. It's no different than self-driving cars. It's happening everywhere. As a profession, it's a good thing. I do believe it's gonna. We talk about the full stack recruiter. In my personal opinion, the best people that get after it, that evolve, that adapt, like anything, like Darwinism, it's a good thing. It's a good opportunity. It just makes you more efficient. You have more time to go hang out with your kids. You'll make placements faster. But I personally, maybe at the low end, if you're doing high volume call center, yeah, you probably won't have a job. If you post and pray, you probably shouldn't have a job, with all due respect, right?
Yeah.
If you're adding value and you're helping be a talent advisor, and you're understand the talent market, and you're helping headhunt amazing talent, and there's move up the value chain, that's indispensable, and that's a 10x recruiter, and that's incredible, and you have a seat at the table. So
So
it's different, right?
I'll give one example. So real example, because I think people on this, like, we're talking about agency stuff now. The biggest risk of all this is corporate recruiters, because for the most part, still 95% plus of corporate recruiters are all post and pray. It's just, I'm going to post jobs, I'm going to pray for people to apply, and then we'll just funnel them through. And really, it's just, there's nothing there of value. There's a Fortune 200 company in the US that had 2 years ago had a 50 million RPO contract that is now down to under 5 million. And by the end of this year will be 0 because they've automated all of this hiring, kind of with some of these AI tools, both machine learning and some generative stuff. And they're going, and that's all the high volume stuff. And they're going to go after the manager hiring and kind of salaried hiring as well. And so they're literally saving $50 million a year. And again, they didn't have a giant corporate TA team because it was RPO. The RPO had over 100 recruiters who is now down to around 12. And so like the corporate side of this where we used to like, be able to go pick off all these dumb corporate like TA teams because they were just post and pray and make all this money. Little by little, this technology is catching up to the point where you're going to see a massive shift, I believe, away from these kind of post and pray recruiters.
It'll be fun to see when that happens. It's a matter of time, like you both said. So this has been a fun panel. I think we're probably going to have to already do another one of these before long because somehow 50 minutes has already gone by, and I promised that we would leave some time for Q&A. So I know we've had a few questions come in through the chat. Lex, do you want to help run us through some of the questions that have been asked, and then we can pose those out to the group?
Perfect. Yes, I will. We've got one in the chat. We've got a couple more that came in through the form. So first we'll start with Helen's question, which is, can Loxo write our campaigns? This is in regards to the conversation you guys were just having.
Yes, definitely can. So we're the first one in a lot of things, a ton of things. And it could be trivial like UI things like the Kanban that a lot of recruiters now have. They're like, whoa, that's really cool, drag and drop. We were not the first, which disappointed our team because we were so far ahead in some things. We're not the first to use Copilot to auto-generate some text. And I was disappointed by that, but our team moves quick. We had the infrastructure, but yes, we have it. The challenge, I think 2 years ago, and I'd be curious what you think, Lou, most recruiting organizations were not yet using an omni-channel or drip sequencing email solution. They're like, no, we're really high touch. We'll never use that. And then you check in with retained search firms, the best in the world. They're like, oh my God, I cannot believe we've been doing things the old way. And you're not going to, the people that just show up and hit a button and blast people, that's horrible. You're spamming. Find the right fit, find the right candidates with precision, but then use technology and personalize it. And you can do that quickly. So yes, we have a brand new button. It is the easy button. And it uses the actual hiring company, the job description, it auto builds it, it's omni-channel. We actually have our brand new Loxo outreach coming out probably this week internally to test, which we're super excited by. But then you still should, in my opinion, talent intelligence, you look at your best performing campaigns, and this goes to like the future of recruitment companies look more like a tech company. So Lex and Sam, you probably want to hire somebody that's really good at this. They look at the data, they A/B test, and they optimize for the rest of the recruiters. And this is how you specialize labor. You have your recruiters who are really good at sourcing. You have somebody that's really good at building these. And then you just tailor it, free search, hit a button. And again, if you're a smaller boutique, we can help you do that really fast. But yes, it does it. Short answer is yes. The longer answer is the more you lean into it and understand this, it's like a superpower. And you're like, wow, I'm a 10x recruiter and making a lot more placements. And it's not hard. We can show you pretty easily.
And if I can share on that too, sorry, if you don't mind, like there's quite a few in our community that there are some really good people in Upwork that can use Loxo, that are familiar with it, that are building the campaigns for them and tailoring messaging and doing exactly as Matt said, testing and iterating and sharing the data on the best performing campaigns and iterating until they've got it working really well. So if it can't do the whole thing on its own, which I don't think anything does yet, as Matt says, like nobody's like quite there with that yet, but there are people that are familiar with Loxo and Upwork, and they're really good.
And
so they can help too.
Just the one thing to add too is I totally agree. And we talk about a lot. I think there'll be a whole ecosystem, kind of like HubSpot. You have all these consulting agencies that are really good at what they do, and they really help add a ton of value. We're seeing a lot of traffic now because our customer partners really need that help. They don't have the expertise. We do it, but they want like really high touch handholding, which is tremendous. It creates lots of businesses from it. But the only other thing I want to say, and I'll get out of here, is I'm really passionate about this. Obviously, a lot of people use bolt-ons and they bolt these things on drip email tools to their legacy system, and they'll create a lot of complexity for themselves. They'll spend a lot of their money, they'll never solve it. And so if you're jumping in and out of systems and bolting on lots of solutions, just because you have a drip email tool, in my personal opinion, that's a really, really horrible way to do it. Like if you have Zapier or you need to hire consultants to come in and fix that, they end up messing it up. You don't need that. It's really simple. And so like simplify everything and bring it down, and you'll be a lot better and faster at your role.
Love it. Okay, so another question that we got that kind of dovetails off of that one is around best practices on using reports and kind of how you're leveraging internal data and usage data, all of that to improve performance.
So simply, we use the reporting stuff really from a funnel standpoint, and we're looking at correlation. So we don't use it as a hammer. I won't allow any of my leadership team to use it as a hammer. It's all about development. We really want to dig in and understand. And we take a look, obviously, across all of our recruiters and different positions to really understand those correlations between send outs to interviews to screens to, at the end of the day, I need to know the capacity of my team as we flex up and down recruiting teams on different projects. And so it's critical for us to truly measure the funnel of what's happening and what's not happening. And we do it all the way up. I mean, we do actually with digital phone stuff as well. Because people, especially the younger, like Gen Z recruiters that we bring in, newer and train, they want to think they can do everything via email or text. At the end of the day, they're, especially when we're dealing with an average salary of over $100,000, I always ask them, like, would you have accepted this job with me coming to work for my company without ever having a live conversation with somebody? They're like, well, of course not. Bing, like, okay, do you understand? You also have to have real conversations with people because they're not going to just trust email and text messaging. Again, we actually did a really big candidate survey. So we actually went out and surveyed 2,000, had 2,000 responses from candidates that we had hired, and said, what's your, like, how would you like us to communicate with you? Across the board, 100% of my team would have said the number one is going to be text messaging. And actually, it came back 85%. It was actually 87% of the 2,000 candidates said as a first outreach, they actually prefer email. And everybody was blown away by that. They're like, wait a minute, email sucks. Why would you say that? And it was going the same thing. The females in the audience here will get this, is like, you don't want idiots in your DMs that you don't know. And when a recruiter texted you and you don't know them, that's exactly what they look at, is like, this is creepy. Why are you texting me? Now, all of those people said as a second outreach, it actually went to 89%. Then they prefer, once they said, like, hey, I want you in my DM through the email, or I'm interested, then it was all text message. They would prefer text messaging or email, no phone calls, right? But like, or I mean, again, the phone call thing was like, they definitely want a phone call in there, but like, just if it's just like connecting real quick to ask a question, it was all of that. So it's super interesting to understand, that email still drives a lot of what we do as a first outreach for recruiters, versus we always just want to jam in text messaging or something like that, or phone calls. So we said all that, but our data actually shows different. Our data actually shows that we get way higher response on phone calls and text messages than email. So the candidate's telling us one thing. The actual practice of the data shows us something different. So you have to kind of balance that. And what we do is our recruiters actually tell, like, in our messaging, we actually recognize that. Like, hey, I understand you don't want this phone call, or I understand you don't want, this text message. I sent you an email as well, right? So we're trying to tell them we understand what you don't want or want, and then they're replying in different ways in terms of that medium, right? That they feel most comfortable in.
All right, great. I'm going to transition into another question. This one, I think, Lou, you'll be the expert on this. How to manage revenue tracking for both contingent and retained placements. Currently, we use the placement section to divide our revenue and generate invoicing information. Do you have any suggestions or workarounds for tracking revenue from retained searches, considering we bill 1/3 upfront, 1/3 at the agreed upon shortlist, and 1/3 at completion?
I don't know whether I am the best person to answer that. Actually, it might be Sam or Matt, because although I teach people how to get to that situation where they are comfortably, where they're billing their fees in 3 stages, I don't teach people how to manage the software of how to track it. And that's where you guys come in, and that's why we work so well with you guys. So I'd be asking the technical guys, how do you do that in the software?
we always do, talk quite a bit about this, is before you first seek to understand, before you tell people what to do. So what we always do when you talk about back office or billing or finance or teams, how do you do that today? Oh, we do use Excel. Okay, well, is that working okay? How many placements a day do you make? Well, we make about one a week. Why are you adding all this crazy infrastructure to make one little invoice, right? Most retained firms do a third. Some do some upfront at succession fee. It depends. We built our own invoicing after a long time because it was a huge demand. We have a nice way to do it. Create the search. You can schedule whatever you want. I think most modern, really good ATS systems should have something like that, right? You definitely should. But it just goes back to the beginning, like, what's your goal? How large are you? What are your goals? Like, always start with understanding and goals before you just race to, like, give me the easy button, give me the solution to my problem. Let's first just sit down, like, take a deep breath and talk about who are we? Where do we want to go and why? Who are the people we have? Who are the systems? People, process, systems, any business. It works really well for recruitment. And recruitment, the very best performing recruiting organizations are professional businesses. I know, like, it's fun to be, there's a culture in recruitment, right? It's really fun and it should keep that 100%. But what we talk a lot about is how can we keep that and make people just better versions of themselves, better organizations. It's out there. There's a blueprint, there's frameworks, there's systems, but you have to do it, right? Tim, you 10 years on tour. I mean, we all know you can't just have people do it for you. And that's a good thing. The brick walls are not there to keep people out. It's to keep, make sure that people want it bad enough are going to get over it. So it's a good thing. There's a good opportunity for everybody here.
Those are some great questions. I'm glad that we had a chance for everyone to submit those. And we also field questions on the podcast in the future. I know we're coming right up at the end. So if anyone else has any other questions, send them to us. podcast@loxo.co. Send it to Lex, Alexander at loxo.co, myself, Sam at loxo.co. And we'll be happy to field those anytime. But Lou, Tim, Matt, I want to personally thank you all for coming and sharing your knowledge, your expertise on this show. Matt, everyone knows where to find you already. Lou, Tim, where can people find you to check out anything that you're sharing, writing, thinking about in the future?
Yeah, cool. So I mainly hang out on LinkedIn, and it's Louise Archer. The firm is Retrained Search. There's loads about us, and we have a website, and my diary is on our website. So and there's a link on my LinkedIn to book some time if you fancy talking, and I'd love to if you do.
Awesome. Yeah, same thing. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty good about following up with like question and answer stuff there. Or you can check out the blog. I write every day, timsackett.com.
Love it. Well, thank you all for joining. Guests, thank you all for joining this as well as our inaugural digital live event. So I bet we'll be having more in the future. So stay tuned for those. But hope everyone has a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and we'll be seeing you all soon. Take care.
Congrats on 100, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.